For the second year in a row, we are at the owners' meetings with Tommy Curran. This is a pass interference tradition now apparently brewing. Unlike last year, we're in the basement, a windowless conference room at a Ritz in Orlando. I remember we were outside. So right off the top, apologies for any ambient noise that might involve a large truck nearby, people moving things. A lot happening at the Breakers in Palm Beach. Beautiful place, by the way. But we are here for football, not the trucks. Robert Kraft's book today, according Tuesday. Mike Vrabel was yesterday. We heard a lot. You've described this as the state of the Patriots. What is the state of the Patriots as we heard it the last couple of days?
I think the state of the Patriots when it comes to the owner is exceedingly optimistic. He talked about a foundation is in place, and I don't really see where the foundation could be in place. They talked last year about trying to create a foundation, re-signed a lot of their own players, didn't do much in free agency, and by the end of the year, they had made little progress. This year, they have added a coaching staff that has more acumen and cohesion to it. So I do think that's an important part of the foundation, but foundational players, I still don't think that they have laid down. Vrabel seemed to indicate that a bit on Monday. Robert Kraft said, we got a foundation. I think that he did check himself a number of times by saying, I know I have to relax here, but I'm excited. So it was funny to see. I'm not going to hold him to anything necessarily, but he is brimming with confidence.
So it's interesting you say that because I read you on the flight down, and the way you put it was things said at the owners' meetings we tend to cling to and we refer back to, and this is months and weeks and sometimes years later. And so why don't you want to hold them to it today? Because I think there wasn't a whole lot, if you really want to squeeze it, like we're going to look back in 4 years and be like, I can't believe he said success will mean the playoffs, which was the big takeaway today.
Yeah, because I think that we weren't able or didn't ask the follow-up, so does that mean not success? So does that mean not playoffs as a failure? And I think that he would have kind of ambled around that and made the point of, well, that's not what I'm saying, because they certainly would not be a failure if they missed the playoffs and the team went 8-9. Drake May had, almost 3-1 TD interceptions, and they looked like they could protect them, and they would occasionally score more than 23 points a game. Then that would constitute an improvement. This team needs improvement. They're 8-26 over the last 2 years. As they said in Monty Python, Meaning of Life, don't go diving for the clitoris. How about some foreplay? What about a simple kiss, boy? You saw the Meaning of Life, right?
Yeah. I'm more of a Holy Grail guy. No, I don't.
You don't remember that from the Meaning of Life?
No,
It's like a sex education. How do you go about,
So is that fair, though? Like,
Don't go diving for the...
No, I don't. We're going to pivot and go back to football. But, like, the idea that, obviously if they make the playoffs, that is a success. If they don't make the playoffs, I think you and I would agree it's not a failure, but that's kind of been spoken into the world as it is right now.
Yeah, and that's probably what we'll cling to.
Yeah.
And, whether it's 2-6 on EEI or 98.5, whether it's in our articles, whether it's on Early Edition and BST, that will be the conversation. What would be a success? Robert Kraft saying make the playoffs. But the push-pull of this that's interesting to me is Mike Vrabel, in a long story that he did with the Athletic's Zach Rosenblatt, where he laid out the three things that he wanted to see with whichever team he joined. It had to have a path or a quarterback in place. Can't remember what the second thing was. But the third thing was he needed to have an owner who understood what his vision was and had realistic expectations. So Vrabel's tapping the brakes here and there as much as he can while still remaining optimistic. And Robert is pushing chips into the middle of the table, I think. But you got to sell. This team is in a position where it needs to be sold to fans.
Yeah, and I'm not going to crush him for that either for a couple of reasons. Number one, like that should be the attitude of every owner everywhere, aside from maybe the Eagles and Chiefs who are just going to the Super Bowl at will the last few years. Like you should say, here's the goal. If not, like what are the players aspiring to? So it's a thing he should have said. B, I think it's within the realm of possibility for them. So like even if you, as we have a new square on the Kraft bingo card, by the way, I'm getting too excited. They told me to calm down next to, I was on the metal bleachers back in 19 below, and I've owned the team for 30 years next to my family. It's the most important thing. I think it's fair. I like it. I think there is some juice. And even if you have to try to speak this into existence as Vrabel taps the brakes, like there's a, narrow end outcome here of the bell curve of the 2025 Patriots. It goes Drake May, year 2 leap. Stephon Diggs is actually healthy week 1, yada, yada, yada. And you just get this competency that goes, we're 5-2. How did this happen?
You have an offensive line. To put a finer point on one of the things that I did kind of push Kraft on right out of the chutes was I continue to try and temper what the expectations are for this team because I think they stink. I think the team stinks, and they've gotten better players, but they still haven't addressed positions on offense. So I did ask Kraft at the outset, is this team still at ground zero? Because in some ways it is. And Kraft said, I think we're beyond that. I don't – I wonder how much lamentation the man does about having hired Giroux last year when Vrabel was available.
I mean, I hope not much anymore because there's no point in that kind of
No,
regret.
there is no point in it, but
it was a wasted year. That's what it was. Like that's what you cost them. You could have been doing this kind of spending and investment and everything to build around Drake May last year.
He seems to regret it so much, Robert, to talk about the misery of the last 2 years. And obviously you end up, in some ways, putting Mayo in a position to fail and embarrassing him, which you probably, as Robert Kraft, feel friggin' horrible about. And, it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that a couple of things around that, too, are, the thing where you overlap with what Vrabel said and what Kraft talked about today was the importance of the draft. Like, if you don't draft well, as Vrabel said, it catches up with you. Kraft saying if you want to win sustainably, you have to draft well. These are captain and sergeant obvious here with those points, but it also speaks to how they got here in the first place. And then looking ahead, how they can dig themselves out. So to them, I think it puts a lot more pressure on this draft, which is just too bad for them because they're picking fourth, not first, because of everything that happened last year.
Yep.
You talk about a wasted year. We're moving forward on that. It's just interesting to me because then you bring in the dynamic of Eliot Wolf, we'll get to in a second. Like, it's just the draft as they see it. And they'll make the picks later this month, but obviously we won't know whether this sets them up in the way that we didn't know Belichick's dynasty was declining because of picks starting even before N'Keal Harry. And that's how we got to where they were in 22 and 23 and 24. Yeah,
it's funny, though. We used to laugh a little bit in, say, 2016 when it was the 4 guys that they drafted and no one worked out. And you're like, well, it's too good a team anyway. They can't make it.
Yeah.
And you saw him cut Duke Dawson as a second-round pick. And that, honestly, I remember covering that. And it was more of a, wow, Bill's a hard-nosed guy, man. He knows what he wants to see. And if he's not seeing it, doesn't matter if it's a second-round pick. And you would look not as much as at that as a abject failure at the time because it was still probably – since 2012 that they were horrendous, but those are smoking guns of not just, wow, they couldn't find anyone. They literally couldn't find anyone.
Or those guys wouldn't stick in the league.
Jonathan
it wasn't
Will,
you were a bad fit. It's like you couldn't play.
Jawan Williams, they couldn't play.
Yeah.
So this is gotta be, and people always say, well, compare it to another team. I have compared it to other teams. The approximate value of the Patriots picks relative to the rest of the AFC is minuscule.
Yeah,
minuscule when you add it all up from Pro Football Reference. But I'm going far afield. They not only cannot not screw up this draft, they can't not screw up the next 2 drafts as well. Otherwise, you are well on your way to having a Drake May, Archie Manning career.
And you'll get an F from folks like us when we grade the drafts and the picks and everything like that. And speaking of F grades, I got the last question in Robert Hurt today. And if this does interest you as much as something else, go with something else. But it was about the NFLPA report card.
Yeah.
The travels and the ashtrays. She was adamant. We had fiery Robert here for a bit. This was not on the bingo card. There are no ashtrays. When was the last time you've seen an ashtray on an airplane? But we do need to upgrade our travel. Like, they're making moves with the facility. We'll see about the plane. What else stuck out to you, if not that, from what we heard from Robert today?
It was funny because Dave Cherubin, who's one of our producers, Cherubin.
Yep.
He's a huge Revs guy, and for whatever reason, he says he's been on that plane 6 times, and he said there are no ashtrays. And nobody is more cynical and prepared to criticize the Krafts than Dave Cherubin. I'll have you know. So I kind of had a feeling that there weren't ashtrays there.
Yeah.
So who said that?
I don't know.
I know. But that's why I take all this shit.
Is that enough of a thing to have a gate? Like, could we have ashtray gate if we needed to get down to this, or is this not big of a scandal to get the gate at the end of it?
We could gate this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could be straight gate.
Okay.
We'll look into it. Yeah. I want to find out. What else I found interesting from today? Not a ton from Robert, really. Honestly, it's just the enthusiasm, the fact that, well, I guess the aging question would stand out as well. That Greg Bedard.
Yeah, the succession. Which initially, it came off to me, and I'd say this to Greg, hey, when are you going to hang it up? It's time to hang it up. Like, come on. Art Rooney did it. So-and-so did it. I think we know Jonathan's taking over, though. Like, it
Yeah.
is the timing is the interesting part of that, but the who and the what and the where are all settled.
Yeah, and I think that it turned into a conversation about what the succession plan is because Robert broached it, and I don't know if Greg necessarily said it, but the question is, you're 82, you're having a good day today here, you're killing it. You don't look 82 to me. You know, you're not having word retrieval, you're not wandering all over the place. I think he does better off the cuff than he does.
Didn't step
in
back
prepared
into
remarks.
the bushes thanks to you.
Yeah, no, he's a wonder. He's Adam Schefter. Starts walking backwards.
Then again, only good things happen in the bushes, according to Robert.
You're gonna have to play that sound.
Not even on the bingo
don't
card.
know what that means.
Yes,
don't know what it means. But yeah, it's an interesting question to ask. The way I was going to phrase it, and I was going to ask the same question, would be: when you bought the team at the age of 51, did you envision yourself still doing this in your 80s as the forward-facing person of the Breakers in Florida?
Yeah.
And he'd say, "Oh, I was only 5 years removed from being on a metal bench." I go,
Time to talk not about football or anything like that. Prizepicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, because when I'm not on this podcast and I'm sitting at home and I'm watching the Celtics, or it could be a hockey game, or it could be a baseball game. Sox are just around the corner. I am playing Prizepicks and I am winning. And I would like you, as someone who supports this podcast, to win a little bit too. Because right now at Prizepicks, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash and run your game all season long. When you build your lineup, you know the deal. 2 to 6 players, all right? Every single time you go to Prizepicks, online or on the app, you'll see a player. And they'll have a stat. And all you have to do with your lineup is pick the player, go more or less on that stat. It could be Jason Tatum, 5 threes. If you think he'll hit him more than 5 threes, he's going to hit more. If you think Kristaps Porzingis will have less than 18 points, hit less. Boom. That's a lineup right there. So 2 to 6 player stat projections over at Prizepicks. Basketball, hockey, baseball around the corner. Of course, football will be back too. And when you sign up today, if you're a new customer, here's the best part. You get $50. 50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prizepicks. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus 50. You just have to play. So sign up today. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and you will get $50 instantly with the promo code CLNS after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run.
Parcells also came up today. Speaking of 80-year-olds, Robert calls him on the phone and says, "Hey, you want to be in the Patriots Hall of Fame?" He goes, "Sure." That was it. And look, I never came close to covering Bill. I've never spoken with Parcells. I think this is overdue, but you were around and a lot closer and certainly spoken to him. What do you think? A, was this the right move? B, what do you think it means to him to go in at this stage of his life and even for Robert?
I started in the year after the Super Bowl. I started in 97, so that draft in which they took Chris Canty was 3 months after Parcells had left to go to the Jets with Bill Belichick and the rest of the staff. So I think that Bill Parcells has served a long enough time in purgatory for the sins committed against the Patriots, and there were some. And also, you got to weigh somebody's sins against their good deeds. He did. It's hard to overstate how important and massive a figure Bill Parcells was in 1990, 91, and 92. The legitimacy that he would bring to any franchise. And the fact that he chose the Patriots was that kind of, he's coming here to this team that has struggled to be legitimate for so long. He's going to come here to this team that is, always in flux and no one's down there anymore to watch the games. So he was important. And we can look up, and guys, if you're listening to the podcast, you're Patriots fans, so you know the numbers about season tickets and everything else. But he actively undermined the team throughout 1996. You can have any number of behind-the-scenes former players or coaches say that Bill was not fully committed in preparation for that Super Bowl in 96. And he spent the next several years trying to undermine the Patriots organization. When he went to the Jets, he killed him. And I know he's an opponent, but he was a, vitriol-laden opponent. So to me, there were points at which I'm like, no, screw him. He tried to destroy the franchise. Why do they have to honor him? But I do think purgatory is a better word for it, and he served plenty of time.
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing that you do at the end. Like they're making and thinking about life decisions in your 80s and things coming to the end. Would you rather make up with someone or hold on to that vitriol, even if it's kind of simmered down a little bit for both ends? So I'm glad he's there. Look, you legitimize a franchise, or having as a 2-time Super Bowl winning head coach. One of your assistants who got there, like you made the introduction, whether he knew it or not, between Kraft and Belichick, who comes back. Belichick's not founding the whole dynasty unless he's here first as an assistant. That's part thanks to Parcells. So. Some people say they see shades of Parcells and Vrabel, too, who we spoke to on Monday. Easy transition. You asked me, we did TV earlier today about Did you glean anything? Any breadcrumbs, any little nuggets, any hints about what they're going to do at number 4? And I wrote and then told you, Will Campbell has to be the odds-on favorite right now. Agree or disagree?
I do agree. I think the odds-on favorite, and you would agree with this, and so would all you football fans out there, the Patriots are first going to try to trade down because they probably understand that Will Campbell could be had at 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even 9. And if you don't get Will Campbell, you might get a representative tackle in Armin Membo. So whichever one of those two players, they could plop there. But to me, the way Vrabel spoke about Will Campbell, the things that he has said about stabilizing the lines, the way he talked about Travis Hunter in that, let's see if he can play one side and get really good at that first before we start deciding whether he can add all this stuff that nobody's ever done. And the fact that that side of the ball for Travis Hunter, who's a more finished product, Will Campbell with below average length arms, who's played 2,600 snaps in the SEC, or Travis Hunter, who has brilliant physical skills, but has never been a devoted wide receiver. He's always been kind of a cornerback in college.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think you look at what's the safest thing for the Patriots to do, where it would be to draft Campbell, but the potential for somebody to say, my God, you idiots passed on Michael Jordan and took Sam Bowie. I mean, Sam Bowie was fine, but I'd still take look, you need a hot water heater.
Yeah, and I think also just his comments about we're really confident we can get a left tackle in the draft, whether it's at 4 or later on. So maybe it isn't Will Campbell. But at some point, you look and go, he's the guy who fits from Vrabel's favorite box in terms of scouting, play demeanor, right? Toughness, done it, outstanding athleticism. I made the comp that, like, he needs to be left tackle Drew Brees, and that, like, the short arms are a thing. It's an outlier. That has to be factored in. How much you factor them is up to people like us and obviously the coaches and scouts. But the point is, if they believe all of his other skills can compensate for that, then you feel confident in that.
On the Drew Brees thing, and you said this on Quick Slants, which is a good take. You're going to like it. I would say this. Drew Brees is a Hall of Fame quarterback, one of the most prolific throwers of all time. So he doesn't have to be left tackle Drew Brees. All he has to be is left tackle Matt Light. I don't care that Matt Light was a second-round pick.
Well, pick short quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, because he was exceptionally accurate.
What you're saying.
Yeah.
He's a Hall of Famer. He's exponential.
Yeah.
I don't need a Hall of Famer at 4 from the 2025 draft. Yeah. There will be Hall of Famers from last year's draft taken most likely after 4 because it was a good friggin' draft. This one ain't the same.
Yeah. I think it's Will Campbell. What else stuck out to you about what Vrabel said, though?
Because it's kind of been my chew toy, the fact that he talked about the drafts and said, you just can't live like that.
Tyler Warren, all those tight ends.
Tyler Warren is a big deal for me. I love Tyler Warren. I love the tight end conversation. Again, I would try to trade down, but I'd stay in the top 10 and take him. And then you add a pick and you get your left tackle later. There's a million things they can do. There's like, when you say these things and you guys are digesting it, if they took Travis Hunter instead of Will Campbell, I wouldn't say they effed it up. I'd say, well, they went in a different direction. I mean, everything is not 100 or 0.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, when I was talking trading down last year or taking a quarterback, potato, you ended up taking a quarterback. He's fine. You're still where you were when I said last year you better take Joe Alt.
Yeah. So. Last time when we were here screaming at each other.
Yes.
The other thing that came up, and I didn't see a lot of people write about this, it was a long quote. It's a little convoluted. But Vrabel was asked about Thomas Brown, who was the first ever passing game coordinator in Patriots history. And it was like, hey, how does that work with him and Josh and so-and-so? And his answer was like, look, between Thomas Brown and Todd Downing, they're a set of eyes and a lot of experience they bring up. This is what we did with the Jets and the Bears. Maybe we can teach it a little bit differently to the players. I think he said, like, it'll hit players in the brain differently. And you go, okay, yeah, that's an obvious point. The issue with Josh's offense, as good as they were with Brady, Cam Newton, Mac Jones, it's really hard for rookie receivers to pick up and digest, and young receivers. If they actually get to implement some new teaching styles or techniques, whatever it is, to help expedite that process, that is a huge boon for not only just Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, but anyone they might draft here coming up, including a Travis Hunter. Like that could be a game changer for what was the one thing you could always be like, guys don't catch on too quickly. It's too complex. There are too many reads and this and that.
Smart guys catch on to it. Former quarterbacks catch on to it. Jacoby Myers, Julian Edelman, Malcolm Mitchell was a very smart kid. How hard are you going to apply yourself? I mean, I remember talking to one player in the locker room.
Well, those are 3 receivers, though, to push back. Like, Edelman was drafted in 2009, and then you had Jacoby was 2019 and Malcolm Mitchell was 2016.
But no, I guess the point I'm making is, and Edelman didn't start out under McDaniels. I'm saying they were McDaniels' younger players who came up in the McDaniels offense and figured it out.
Yeah.
And the Patriots finally said, well, we can't really draft them. Josh has to figure out a way to meet people halfway.
Right. And I think that's what Vrabel was saying is Thomas and Todd will help him do that. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, too. There was a question about the 3 offensive line coaches. I think a lot of teams are starting to, and this was something Albert Breer mentioned to me, a lot of teams are starting to find ways to develop the bottom of the roster.
Yes.
So that when you have the season starts and training camp's over and the offensive line coach is spending all the time with the starters and you got, Lachita Smith or whoever it is down there not getting any better, you now have a coach to say, let's go over this stuff one more time.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's go on to Eliot Wolf, who did not speak to us in a scrum here today, but did a little show here, talked to him there in the hallway, did that show. There's one quote that I had to watch this video a few times. He was on with Kay Adams, your girl, and she asked, which is sexier, Travis Hunter with Christian Gonzalez or Travis Hunter with Stephon Diggs? Basically, if you took Travis Hunter, where would he play? This was Eliot's quote. That's a great question. And I think that if he's available, which is a huge question mark, that'll be up to the coaching staff to determine where he's going to fit in and also if we would even pick him. To me, that is a man who is held in a secret, as some have been known to do, finally letting it out of the bag and not knowing it on air. And I think he said the quiet part out loud. This is Vrabel's pick. It's his choice, as much as he's here with all the other GMs, because Ryan Cowden's also here, the guy who may very well replace him in less than 2 months.
Yeah. I have a tendency, if I don't have a chance to ask a follow-up, to not want to hang people with what they say necessarily as being like, I listened to that quote and he's saying the coaching staff, and it is noteworthy because he definitely says if they decide to pick him.
Yes. If we would even pick him.
If we would even pick him. And he says that in conjunction with the coaching staff. So where would we play him? He's not going to say where we're going to play him because that's not his job, although he might have tried to last year with Mayo. And if the Patriots say, look, he's not a receiver right now, he's a cornerback, do you want to draft him to play cornerback with Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis sitting back there? Yeah. And maybe that's the cover? I don't know. It's interesting to me. He definitely said the quiet part out loud, but I'd have to would like the opportunity to challenge him. Since he'll go hide in an alcove somewhere, we will never get a chance to say, did you mean the coaching staff will make the decision on? No, it's collaborative. It's collaborative.
Well, and look, we
go, no, it's collaborative.
Yeah,
with this head.
Eliot head. Look, I've said stupid shit on air before and wanted it back. You know, even stuff that I knew or believed or said it a little bit too strongly. So I'm with you there and granting the grace.
Saying we're going to go to the playoffs. It's a failure if we don't go to the playoffs.
But also the surrounding circumstances of how they've been operating, the players that they've signed or targeted are all Vrabel driven. And we know, and he knows this, he said it, this is a head coach centric organization, which you don't find other places.
And I found that comment from Vrabel, which I kind of based a column around today, when he said, put it on me. It's on me. Because that's the problem with this organization, really, since 2017, the amount of backstabbing and blame laying. It's Bill's fault, it's Tom's fault, it's Mac's fault, it's Gerard's fault, it's Matt Patricia's fault, it's Jonathan's fault, it's Robert's fault, it's the Dynasty producer's fault, it's the media's fault, it's everybody's fault. And there's plenty of times we'll see people stand up there, whether it's Bill Belichick at a podium or Eliot Wolf just a couple months ago and say, put it on me, blame it on me, that's all on me, that's my bad. And then they'll walk away from the podium, and behind the curtain, they're shivving each other left and right and trying to lay blame. So to me, it was good to hear Vrabel say, it's me.
Yep. And
we'll see if he means it in November or December if the poop's hitting the fan. But these should be his decisions because he should take the shit for him.
Yeah, and they brought him in and fired everyone else and paid everyone out and then paid all of his assistants to come in and fix it. Like, this is what you're here for, is to be the guy, the savior, which they expected Gerard to do way too early. But now you're asking Mike Vrabel to do the same thing. And I'll say this, too. He is not, as Felgrassen yesterday, a part of the Belichick coaching tree. But that is among the best things that I think he obviously took from Bill, is the whatever goes wrong, put it on me. Like, someone false starts, we didn't coach him well enough, and I think
but he says that.
Well, I'm for the most part with Bill. For the most part with Bill. For Vrabel, I think it's going to be that generates a little bit of buy-in and security from the guys that he's trying to make an established connection with, which Bill didn't have. It was like, all right, I'm never going to throw you under the bus publicly, but But Vrabel won't, and I think that's a positive.
Yeah.
Because even Eliot to our guy Henry McKenna talking about Jalen Polk and a long story late in the season. Didn't have the development that we thought he would get.
Reprehensible.
Yeah.
And he said internal development wasn't what we expected to Henry McKenna. And he also mentioned it, I believe, to Felger yesterday on 98.5. Used the word internal development. Internal development simply means coaching. How did the player develop after Eliot said, we want that one?
Yep.
And you can't put it all on the coaches. If you hire a guy who's a bleeping idiot, who happens to be talented, and he doesn't work out, you can't just say, well, I don't know why he didn't show up on time and go to the places that he was supposed to go. Seems pretty fast to me.
All right, we got to go.
Good.
I want one moment, though, from you that just a Breakers moment. Like, this is my first time here. It's an old hotel. This is like White Lotus type of money walking around. Aside from us, you feel very unwashed, just like a reporter and regular clothes and whatever. But, like, something you saw, did, or heard that kind of captures, like, where we are right now.
Well, I like coming to this location. I really like the Biltmore in Scottsdale. The only we don't stay at these hotels.
No.
I'm at the Residence Inn. But being here, you're on a furious ocean. It's called the Breakers because the sea hits here so hard. But if you go across the thing, you're at Mar-a-Lago, which is 12 minutes away. And Mar-a-Lago is actually at the top of a street. I don't call it South Ocean Boulevard or something. It's called Billionaires Row because all the houses belong to billionaires. But there's this tiny golf course called the Palm Beach Par 3. Some people have called it the best par 3 golf course in the country. I played it Saturday and I played it Sunday. It took me 2 hours. It is unbelievably fun. It's $70 to walk.
I should have known this is where this was going.
I'm telling you though, if you are, even if you're not a golfer, go over to the Palm Beach Par 3 and have a drink and some dinner up in their gorgeous little place because you're just going to see aged billionaire wives and their aged billionaire husbands and people like me.
Yeah.
And it really gives you a sense. Or come here and look at it. My wife will not. Twice we've been down here. And neither time has she wanted to be in that lobby of the hotel. She's like, no, not for me. Not us. That's not me.
Yeah, I didn't feel good just doing my job
It's
in there.
weird.
It's very weird. Here's my moment. It's a dollar figure. I got our guy Doug soda water the other day. We're hanging out bar, as you often do in the lobby, other places, just fishing. You want to guess how much that soda water costs?
Here?
Here.
Well, I'm guessing it's exorbitant. $14.50.
Oh no. Okay.
All right,
$6.75. $6.75 for a little CO2. Put in your H2O, and here you go.
That's unbelievable.
Which my beer was $12, and it's kind of expected coming in here. Outrageous, nonetheless. A very nice local amber. I was happy with it.
Yeah.
I was not happy for the $6.75 for our guy.
$1,600 a night here, and they won't let us shoot the hotel.
That's better. That's a better figure. Oh
yes, they won't let us shoot the hotel. We can't. So we're actually in a position where if they walk by, they might get hot.
Yes.
But you cannot shoot your video
yes.
with the hotel in the background. And I think part of it is because there's residences here. Kraft used to have an apartment here, an apartment, condo, whatever you call it.
Villa.
A villa.
So, cool. All right, on that note, we can't shoot here at the Breakers, so we will stop. Thank you for watching, listening. This is Tommy Curran, NBC Sports Boston. Watch, listen to him. Oh, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You got to get those numbers up. See you, pal.
Bye, guy.